Welcome, both of you. I'm so excited to learn from you today, and everybody is just really excited to be talking case studies. First questions first, though. I want to know more about you and your backgrounds, but I also want to know what company you're an advocate for as well. It's a tough one, but it's helpful.
All right, well, hi everyone. My name is Catherine Cola. I am a customer marketing manager at SailPoint Technologies, which is a cybersecurity company focused on identity management. I've been in customer marketing for about 3 years now. Always been in B2B tech marketing. Prior to SailPoint, I was at IBM for several years, and primarily in product marketing and customer marketing roles. This topic is super important to me, and I'm very passionate about it because it is a hard thing to get right. And it is a hard yes many times. And when you do get those yeses and you do get those big wins, you feel great, and the team feels great, and it's something that you just want to shout from the rooftops. So I'm really happy to be here today to talk to you all about it. And I'm an advocate for, I used to live in Austin, Texas. I'm an advocate for the supermarket brand H-E-B. I don't know if anyone is familiar with it. But yeah, talk about a good product, a clean, big supermarket with fresh food. I mean, that is my love language.
We love to see it. We love to see it.
Yeah.
Natalie, what's your background, and tell us more about you.
Sure. So my name is Natalie Gillette. I work at HubSpot. I've heard it mentioned a couple times, so I'm thinking everyone kind of knows what HubSpot is. But if not, the long story short that we say at HubSpot is we help your companies grow better, be it through marketing, service, ops, operations, CRM, or sales tools. So that's the end of the HubSpot spiel. I've been in marketing since I finished my MBA in 2015. Well, technically 2013 is when I started in marketing. I've done customer marketing, content marketing, digital marketing, the whole gamut of marketing rather. So lots of different places I've been, but I really do like customer storytelling. I guess I like a challenge, or I love to be punished because it is very difficult to get right, but it is a fun challenge. And like you said, the rewards are so great when you do receive it. So I have two things I'm an advocate for. The B2B tool that I'm an advocate for, I'm not saying this, no, Ari did not pay me, but Influitive. I'm actually talking through HubSpot like, can you please go to Influtive?
That's great.
Please. And so that's my B2B tool, but I'm from Atlanta, so I obviously flew Delta Airlines. I love Coca-Cola. So I'm from Atlanta, I live in Atlanta, so I'm a big Atlanta company advocate. I love Chick-fil-A. Even though I don't eat meat, I still go and just smell the atmosphere.
That is true
loyal.
Next level advocacy.
I will get their waffle fries. They're really great.
Yep. Yeah.
And then I'll just smell and just say, what does the chicken nugget still smell like?
That's so funny. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad to hear more about your background too. So first, we're going to start with just like the absolute most hard-hitting question possible. How do you get people to say yes to participate and not ghost you? And maybe even next level, how do you get them to say yes and be named publicly as well?
Yeah.
So let's, we could start with you, Catherine, and then go to you, Natalie.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a challenge. It's a tall order, especially being in the cybersecurity space. Our customers are literally defending themselves from hackers every minute of every day. So they're not always very eager to share their secret sauce of their, what they're using in cyber. I think also we tend to target our Fortune 500 customers who oftentimes just have blanket policies that say, hey, we can't act as an advocate, we can't do anything externally. So those are two major barriers and hurdles that we have to get through. It is possible, and I think earlier this morning we heard my main message, which is it's all about the self-promotion and what's in it for the customer. I think the biggest pull that we've seen is when we position this as a way to promote and elevate your professional brand. The customer built this team and built this program using our technologies and has achieved incredible success. And so we want them to use that to advance, their interests, their career, whatever it may be, and to share with their networks. And I think when we create these large-scale case studies, they're they're a really nice package and a testament to the success of the customer. You know, it's a beautiful web page. It's oftentimes a video testimonial. A lot of money goes behind it, right? And it's a beautiful piece of work that the customer can hold on to and be proud of and use to promote themselves. So that's how we've seen the most success. Of course, incentives are nice and they're thank yous, and gifting is great, and reference points and things of that nature. And you know, sometimes we'll position meetings with our executive leadership team, and that seems to be a nice add-on. But it's really all about that large-scale self-promotion. And I think another side of it is making the request as simple and easy as possible for the customer, conveying that it's not a big lift, it's not going to take up a ton of your time, being really clear on what's needed and the timeline and all of that. I think that also helps kind of get the yes of, you know, it's not so daunting and I can take this on.
Right. That's really great to hear. I'm also, you know, in security. I know bodyguard, but yeah, people. It's a tricky thing to get people to say yes.
Yeah.
So Natalie, does that look different in your world?
It does.
Yeah.
When you don't have the restrictions, and I don't envy you guys. At the last company I worked with, it was fintech, and so therefore they did not want to talk as much. Most of my buyer personas were accountants. I don't know if you guys have worked with accountants before. They don't like to talk. They're not really a chatty group, and neither are lawyers or financial professionals. So trying to get them to talk to you sometimes can be a little bit challenging, but I want to back it up before you even go talk to the customer. Did you talk to your CSMs internally? Did you talk to your sales reps? What rating are they? Are they green? Are they yellow? Are they red? Are they talking to their CSMs on a regular basis? Are they showing up to those meetings? How do you make sure that when you're going to talk to this customer, your odds of getting a yes is already 90+%? If it's not that high, you may want to go look at another customer. But at HubSpot, in my world, I'm very lucky. So I say that when I try to get customers to say yes, they're kind of obligated to do so. We have a program that essentially says, hey, in exchange for some type of incentive from a company level, you agree to do a case study for us within your contract term. So usually when I go, I know my answer is going to be yes, or you're going to get kicked out of the program, which is really nice. However, do I get no's? Do it gets pushed out? Yes, that does happen. Sometimes the customer's in yellow, something's going on with the product, or red. Like, I'm sure no one's had any issues with products, right? No one has had any issues. The product team did not miss their deadline on launching that major thing that customers asked for, right? But when that does happen and, you know, everything is a little crazy, we tend to go back and say, okay, well, maybe you can't do a case study now. Is there another way we can get a customer story? And I think we'll talk about that a little bit later. But making sure we stay engaged with the customer, using empathy, I'm sure you all know this as well, and understanding and saying, hey, you know what, this is a great opportunity to think about our process and planning for the customer story in the future, because a win is a win. So maybe your customer story was going to be one thing before you figured out that this customer was in red, but now here's an opportunity for this customer to move to green and have an even more robust story. So it's even stronger than you first admitted. So don't think that the no's are one, permanent, and then two, make sure that when you are looking at, okay, there's a no now, and maybe later, how your story evolves and gets even better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the customer can change their mind, right? And being persistent is always good. You know, setting that reminder to follow up in 6 months and check in again, that does, you know, that works. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
What are, you mentioned like how you are able to see if customers already opted into case studies. What are some other criterias that you would recommend people take in mind when they're trying to find their list of targets, their list of right customers?
Yeah.
Sure. So I'll say with HubSpot and even in general, first I start with something very, very broad like industry and working with your product marketing team. I'm sure as you all know as customer marketers, collaboration is the name of the game. So you're going to have to talk to so many people. Your product marketers will tell you your buyer personas and what their objections are. So then that's how you're going to know which customer you want to go to, because you want to answer that. And usually that ties into the sales team. If you want the sales team to adopt, then you're going to want to give them the content that they're going to ask for. Now, are they going to ask for craziness? I know at lunch we were talking about how they'll ask for very specific things. My example is, I think I got a ping while I was here. Do you have a nursing home in the middle of Idaho that used HubSpot for 6 months and then changed over to a retirement home or something else? And I was like, what? Like, exactly, it's your life, right? It's what we do, how we know that. But I will say that understanding what is similar to it, well, maybe I don't have a nursing home in Idaho, but maybe I have a nursing home in Georgia. Like, will that work? Like, what can we do? Like, what are the challenges that you're looking to solve? And that helps. But again, that starts with the industry. Sometimes we look at things like, what are our company goals? What are the things that the CEO wants to do for the company to grow? Okay, how does this customer story help that? How do we feed into any of the marketing goals we have? And yes, sometimes, unfortunately, your stakeholders are going to ask you to have one case study to fit 6 goals. It's gonna be hard. And it's not always possible. It's actually probably not a good idea when you're doing storytelling. We all know this, but it's okay. Our stakeholders will get there one day. But just remembering to think about the high level goals that you have, make sure they tie to your company goals, and hopefully your company goals tie to your marketing goals. Don't feel bad if they don't, because not all companies have your goals aligned across the board. It happens. But if you gotta think about what someone said earlier, don't try to boil the ocean. Think about the things you can do as quick wins, because in this world of storytelling, you're gonna get more no's or you're gonna get more pushback. So if you're like, I can't solve the buyer persona of a CIO right now, but I can get someone in the tech industry to do a case study. Okay, that's a quick win. I feel good, I feel invigorated. And you're gonna need that energy when you're trying to go to the next person to give you that customer story, if that makes sense. So just think about how you start with your quick goals, your quick wins, and then keep going from there, and make realistic expectations helps you get your customers.
Great advice.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think sometimes in marketing, we tend to have the thought, build it and they will come. That's not right. So for us, the right customer is the story that's going to be seen, and that completely ties to your campaign goals, your marketing goals, your messaging goals. So, you can't think of the case study as a standalone piece of content. It's a component to your larger marketing programs and your larger messaging goals. So the right customers for us kind of fit in with what the message is that we're trying to get out. And I think, you talked about working with your CSMs and making sure they're the right customer to go after. That's another big part of all of this. Are they happy? Are they approachable? Is now the right time? Those are, just things that you can't avoid.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we talked about the criteria for the right customer. So what about the recipe for the right story? What does the outline of your go-to case studies look like? What would you recommend folks include, especially to really leave a powerful impression with prospects and customers that read it?
Yeah, I would say, so there's no one-size-fits-all approach for a customer story. Customer stories come in all different shapes and sizes, right? Again, I think it goes back to your campaign goals and the type of content that's going to be seen and is needed. I think for us, when we have a rock star customer who's willing to do this, we tend to gravitate towards, a full web page dedicated to their story with a video testimonial, and with, pull quotes and customer imagery and the works. That for us is what gets the most engagement and the path that we like to take. But of course, we're not going to get that for every customer, and we have blogs for customers whose messaging doesn't fit in with what we're trying to achieve. We have pitch decks, we have peer reviews and other forms of quotes and things like that. So no one size fits all, but we tend to gravitate towards a web and video component.
Right.
If we're talking about like getting a customer story, we try to start with a written one because it lasts, and HubSpot loves inbound marketing. So of course we want written content on our website. Why wouldn't we? But what we did was, actually my team member did it, who isn't here, but he revamped the process. He said, hey, we work with a third party at HubSpot, and so they help us write our stories, but we do an intake form. So we give it to the customer, give them 6 minutes with the customer questions, and then we feed it to our third party. It usually helps us, and it helps the customer because they know what kind of things to think about. And of course, our third party company who works with us, they come back and say, hey, we're ready to schedule an interview with you. It'll take 30 minutes of your time. And so essentially what ends up happening is that the customer feels a little bit more at ease at the beginning of the process. The reason why I bring that up and why we start, of course, with written content is because, of course, it's usually the low lift. It's the one that we can get the fastest. Video takes the longest for us, especially long form video that is on site at the customer's office that we ultimately love to do because it's usually beautiful and it's done really well. But between our budget, our schedules, their time, their schedules, it doesn't always work that way. So we have a process in place to where we say, hey, go ahead and complete this for us, give us that information. And even if I can't get the case study right then, I still have some information from the customer I may not have gotten from the CSM. So therefore I can say, can I pull out a quote? Can I make something cool and talk to my social team and say, please, please, please add this to your content calendar? Can I make this into something that I can put in the sales enablement toolkit? Is it something I can put in a template for my BDRs? Like I have some pieces for, customer storytelling, so it's a win. But I will also add that we also think about the content that we have. So if we don't have long form content, which is everyone's probably gold, because then you can just pull everything, we take the short content, we move forward. And we'll say, let's start with short content. Where can this executive quote can go? Because we'll get those executive quotes. It'll go on this landing page because it fits right into this thing that we're trying to sell right now. We're trying to really beef up Sales Hub or what have you. So then we'll put the executive quote there, and then we'll make sure we put it back in the case study later on. If we're trying to do a video where we're saying this is a really great story, but we don't really need the visual elements of it, we just really need someone there that seems personable, especially if it's an exec. Of course, we're going to do a video. So there isn't, to Catherine's point, there isn't one size that fits all. But think about what story you want to tell, how you want to tell it, what works with the customer, and then most importantly, your prospects that you're talking to, how are they going to receive it? Because some people respond a little bit better to a blog or a customer story in written form than they would a video. If you could get all of it, great. But if you can't, you have to prioritize. And sometimes they don't all align, and so you have to go with what you can do.
I was just thinking of Tessa's snippets and her grid, right? It sounds like everybody balancing case studies, stories, customer marketing. You have your own version of the grid and knowing how you're going to funnel it. So whether it's a blog post, whether it's a video on site at a nursing home in Idaho, what do you think the elements are, or what would you recommend to be included to tell the best possible story?
Yeah. We've heard this a few times today, right? The customer is the hero. Their success is at the heart of the story. It's not about you, your brand, your product. It's all about them. Uncovering their problem, their challenge, their solution, their results, that's your focus. And so much of this is about the people. It's people working with technology and processes, but it's the people behind the technologies who are day-to-day building these programs and having success. So that's, without a doubt, that's a best practice. I think then we're all consumers. We all read customer testimonials. Attract the audience, attract your prospects, write captivating headlines, make sure the case study looks nice. We spend a lot of time with our design and our brand team to get that web right and get that experience right. And it's a long form story, but do you have the main points up at the top so you're not wasting people's time and they can get to the heart of the story? Those are just some elements of success, I think.
I guess because I loved math as a kid, I love numbers. I want to see numbers. I want to see them as much as I can. How much revenue did I get that organization? How much time did I save? I'm like so excited. I literally just looked at a case study yesterday and was like, ooh, that title has 800% savings. I love it. Like I'm just so invigorated. So, prospects love it too. So me and prospects have something in common. So usually now my third party knows, okay, if I'm gonna send a draft to Natalie, she needs to see a number somewhere, and they already know in the interview now what questions do we need to ask to get it, or they give me a nice little disclaimer when they see the email. Before you read the draft, Natalie, there aren't really many metrics here. And then we have to get creative too. Like, did we save time in onboarding? Or instead of just saving time overall, can we approximate those metrics? So make sure you have the numbers there, because again, a lot of the case studies or customer success stories, as now we're starting to call them, they're lower in the funnel. So at that point, you're not just going to the person who's the user, you're going to the buyer. Usually the buyer is someone in the exec suite. And what do execs want? They want numbers. They want to know how you're going to help them meet their bottom line. And they want to see how you did it, maybe not in detail, and they can also find that in the case study, but they're going to want to know the results. It's pretty much a moot point if you tell this beautiful story, but then you don't have results to go with it. So that's my number one tip. If you take nothing else away, make sure you get a number somewhere. And I know that can be hard in the security industry. It was very hard in an industry that was full of compliance. I did it before, but that's when I started getting creative and say, well, what are your problems that you have? And so if I ask the customer what their problems are and how my tool helps solve them, then I knew these are the numbers I need to try to get them to say without hand feeding them this is what I need you to say, if that makes sense.
Right. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think it also speaks to why a customer would say yes or even want to be involved.
Right.
They get that one-on-one attention, or you're supporting even your internal stakeholders of the CSMs and the account managers to give them that special attention, help remind them or show them a new light of the ROI they're getting in a way.
Exactly.
Really awesome. So, you mentioned having those numbers in is very important, because oftentimes those case studies are in front of buyers. Buyers want to see the ROI, what's going to be on the other end. What are some ways that you can really tell if your case study or customer story is successful and really resonating with the audience and doing what you intended it to do?
Yeah, I think as far as resonating with the audience, we try to highlight relatability in the stories as much as possible. We want a customer or a prospect to be reading this and thinking, hey, I'm just as big as this customer, my environment is just as complicated. They did it, so could I. We just had a great case study with a large retailer, and we kind of positioned it as the art of the possible, because it was all of those things. It was a really large environment with hundreds of thousands of digital identities that needed to be managed, and a program that had historically failed. So to be able to show that as the shiny star of, hey, you can do this too, that relatability aspect, whether it's just in the industry alone or the size, whatever it may be, I think that resonates. And then also, as Natalie mentioned, the results are crucial for resonating with an audience. And in cyber, it is really hard. It's hard to get those hard-hitting stats, but there are ways around that, right? And you can make this a softer success metric about productivity, about cost savings, about time saved and time gained and things like that. So, you just have to work that angle and get it right, but you absolutely have to show, paint a powerful before and after, because that's what the audience is going to take away.
Right.
I'm going to be a little radical. Don't kill me, marketers. Please don't take my marketing card. Ask your sales team. Go talk to your sales team, say, what do you think about this case study? Because remember, they're going to be the ones asking you, do we have a case study that does A, B, C, D? Not all of them. Don't ask the whole sales org, because you're going to get a million responses. Maybe ask your sales leaders, hey, what do you think about these case studies? Give me some candid feedback, and be open to receiving it and going from there. And ask them not just their opinion, ask them based off of the objections they received. I'm assuming we all have sat on those calls with your sales teams where you've heard the objections firsthand from prospects, and you've taken it back and you've applied it. Now that you've done that, you can now show them and say, here's a case study. They'll let you know how it resonates, because then you're hitting another goal, sales enablement. They're now using your stuff because you've brought them in on the process, and it's going to resonate. And therefore, it's going to resonate probably with your audience, because you've asked both audiences. Because sometimes prospects will tell you by their actions how things go, or even by their words, right? And sometimes their words don't match their actions, which is another conversation for another day, which I know we've all faced that before. But definitely ask your sales teams, ask them how this resonates, maybe ask the CSMs, but more so ask your sales teams what their feedback is, and see how that resonates, and then see your influence ARR go up.
Love that. Just to add on another question to that. So I personally use HubSpot to this before. You mentioned that you have case studies on web pages too. Are you looking at your page analytics as well to see where people like are clicking, the hotspots on the page? Have you gone to that level as well to see what resonates?
I will be honest, I have not. However, that does not mean it does not happen. So I know I was talking to a few people about team structure. So I work at a high level strategic terms of case studies, which ones we're going after, et cetera. My team members have looked at them before, and they are a little bit more in the weeds, I'm sure, as you all know. So they've looked at that a little bit before, but they don't look at it as much as they look at conversions. Like, yes, we see people clicking here, that's great, but they're clicking and they're getting the information, but they're not converting. It's not turning into influence MRR or ARR or anything like that. So it's great that they're interested in it, but it's not moving the needle. And I don't want to say we don't care about vanity metrics, but it's just not something that we lean heavily on to decide what the strategy will be next quarter or next year, things like that.
Right. How about you?
Yeah, we look at the engagement metrics that are available to us. We look at views and click-throughs. I think as part of our strategy for next year, there's going to be greater focus on tying these case studies to ROI wherever possible, and so we're kind of in those planning phases and figuring it out. But yeah, we do take advantage of the Google Analytics and all that's made available to us to make sense of how the web page is performing.
Right. Awesome. Well, I slid in my question. Now time for you guys to slide over yours. Thank you so much for all of those insights. If any of you all have questions for Catherine and Natalie, feel free to submit them now. I am curious, out of maybe all the case studies that you've worked on in 2022, how many of those long form videos have you done? I feel like those have gone up and down,
Yeah.
of course, since the pandemic. But
Yeah, I've done one.
Okay.
And well, one long form, I've done maybe 2 smaller scale, not full case studies, but it was a great one, and it was something that we waited a long time for. It's a Fortune 500 customer. It's a great story. So, you take your wins where you can get them. And we hope to improve that, and that's just an AMS. I have a counterpart in EMEA who's done a few more than that. So it all just depends. But yeah, one true case study video for this year.
right, legend tier, basically.
Yeah.
Long form, North America, last I checked, because I remember us looking at Q1. I know I stopped looking at Q2, Q3 because we were preparing for inbound. I think we had about 5, which is not a ton, but that's only North America. That's not including EMEA or other regions. But
Nice.
again, I cheat a little bit because we have inbound and we had a hero stage with customers. We just recorded the sessions and we're going to pull out the content from there. And we're like, hey, customer stories and this long form content. So it kind of goes back to that repurposing. And that's how we've decided to move towards getting more videos, because the customers are all there and they're already going to speak. And the way they told their customer stories wasn't even like a case study. It was very unique. They talked about their industry and their thought leadership, and then they talked about how HubSpot helped them to grow within their industry. Like we said, HubSpot helps you grow better.
Well, that.
Yeah, we've had customer testimonials at our events over the course of the year, but when I think of a case study story, I'm thinking about going down to the customer's office, and that's what I mean by that one. But I will say the video testimonial for me is harder to get the yes on than the case study, and so that's a challenge, and I think something we're gonna focus on fixing next year.
Yeah.
It's hard to get. I mean, because it takes a lot of time. It takes the customers full day, 2 days. It's a big commitment.
Right.
So.
So that speaks to one of the highest voted questions here, because you are going to get a different varying level of sign-on from customers. How do you think anonymous stories are valuable?
Yes
Do you
and
think it's
no.
worth the time?
Yes and
We
no.
have-
Yes and no. It depends. How do you anonymize it? So for example, I had a university at my last company that refused to let us state their name. And I got so particular. I said, it is a university in the Midwestern region, and it's the largest university. Like, I described it so much to where if you just Googled a couple, rhymes with what? Rhymes with Mutah. And so basically, it got so descriptive to where I was surprised they let it go. I was getting really creative, and that was back when I was writing the actual stories, to where that, if it's anonymized like that, then yes, it provides value, but also because it was the industry. I said university, so people were like, oh, I don't care, I just need a university, and I said the size of the university. So my prospects did not care. They're like, okay, but if it's like one customer who's like, no, you can't say industry, you can't, and I'm like, what's the real point? Like, I did this whole case study just to get PR or legal to knock me down. You feel like you're taking a few steps back. So then I had to get creative again and just say size if they allowed me to say size, but that's why I say yes and no, because my buyers will start telling me. I would say one of the biggest underrated skills with being a customer storyteller or a customer marketer is listening. I just let the buyers and the customers tell me everything. Then I let internal tell me everything. Yes, it makes me crazy. Literally, you can tell. But like, literally, that's what you have to do. Like, oh, okay, well, this person said this. Now, how do I take all of these different pieces together? Maybe that's why I like data. Maybe that's why I like surveys. And then make it to where pretty much everyone is going to be happy, but everyone, oh, I see that Natalie included this, and then that's how I also get buy-in and more yeses.
Love that. Yeah. The next question that we have speaks to what you were saying, Natalie, as well about those numbers. How do you access those higher level team members, or even team members on other teams that would have more access to the analytics for customers, like to be able to tell the ROI? Actually, reading this question again, it's also about like explaining the success of your case study too, but how do you make sure to maintain those relationships and then also advocate for the value of your partnership with that team member?
That's a really great question. Luckily, HubSpot is bought in. I didn't have that in past companies, so I'll talk about that versus HubSpot in this instance. A lot of organizations are starting to learn the value. I would say I noticed the change during the pandemic because everyone was all about retention then. And so having to explain to your leaders in marketing or in other areas of the company to say, hey, just remember that in order for us to meet these revenue goals that we have, you have to retain all the customers you have. And that doesn't happen just by continuing the status quo, or it doesn't always happen because, they're happy customers or what have you. Just understand if these goals don't include, churn, which we hate that word, is bad, then you won't be able to maintain those goals. But let me tell you, I have a plan on how to do that. The way we're gonna do this is we're going to give the customers these opportunities here. So even if it's not inbound at HubSpot, there are opportunities with organizations like Customer Marketing Alliance. Okay, we know this person would like to speak there. So therefore we offer that value to them, and so therefore they have those assets. If you're talking about internally, how do we do that as well? I let my executives talk to other executives at my customers. They all like to talk to each other. Executives love to talk to each other. They love to understand that someone knows. They crave that community. That's one of the biggest things that we've been told at HubSpot, is that they love to speak to each other. So a lot of times my senior VP, he knows I'm reaching out to a customer, I'm having a challenge, and he's actually pinged me on Slack before and says, is it time for me to jump in yet? Not quite, but I will let you know if I can't turn around the relationship. And so that's how I stay in touch with them and understand that ROI, because they'll ask me every month, what is the influence MRR your stories produce, Natalie? And if I don't have the number, it's gonna be like, well, what are you doing? So if you're asking about, and I think I understand the question in terms of internally, how do I get the buy-in? I let them know what's going on and I let them talk to my customers. And then if we're talking about externally, how do we get that buy-in? We let them know like, hey, here are the benefits of the things that they want at their senior level.
Great. Thank you so much for that. We have to wrap up this session now, but I'm sure many folks also have more questions around this. So feel free to grab Catherine and Natalie later. But thank you so much for all of these insights. It was a great deep dive into case studies, which definitely keep us up at night, don't they? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.